All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving headfirst into a massive, frankly mind-bending forensic investigation. We are looking at a source document that makes some truly explosive claims about the world around us. Seriously, we're going to unpack the author's argument that the actual sky above our heads has been transformed into a literal geopolitical weapons platform. It's a meticulously detailed breakdown of geoengineering, and today we're going to impartially examine the exact evidence this text presents, piece by piece. To really set the stage here, let's look at a direct quote right from the source text. It says, "The sky is no longer the sky. It is the largest and most ambitious weapons platform ever deployed." Wow. That right there is the central premise of the document, what the author actually calls a Gnostic indictment. Now, I want to be clear, we aren't taking sides or endorsing these viewpoints today. But we are absolutely going to map out exactly how this controversial, gripping argument is constructed. So here is our roadmap for today's dossier. First, we'll look at the weaponization of weather. Second, the historical precedent of Operation Popeye. Third, the hurricane control patent. Fourth, acoustic generators and resonance. Fifth, the alleged geopolitical endgame. And finally, climate resilience as a form of control. Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, the weaponization of weather, from conspiracy to declassified history. The source makes a really compelling point right off the bat. To understand the present, we have to look at the past. Weather modification, according to this text, is absolutely not some new sci-fi theory. It's a 75-year-old operational military science. Just look at this timeline. Back in 1947, you had Project Cirrus. This was a joint project between the military and General Electric, where they allegedly dropped crushed dry ice into a hurricane off the coast of Florida. Well, the storm abruptly changed course by 90 degrees and slammed straight into Savannah, Georgia. The author frames this massive accident as a literal scientific proof of concept. Fast forward to 1967, and we see the start of a 5-year tactical deployment of weather weapons during the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye, which was eventually blown wide open by investigative journalist Jack Anderson. Moving right along to Section 2, Operation Popeye, Historical Precedent, what the text calls the smoking gun of weather warfare. So the author zeroes in heavily on Operation Popeye to prove that manipulating the sky is, well, a matter of public record. But here is the crucial takeaway. The mechanics of these weapons have evolved entirely. Back in the 1960s, the CIA and U.S. Air Force artificially extended the monsoon season over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they did this by deliberately dropping physical silver and lead iodide flares out of C-130 aircraft to seed the clouds. It was a pretty crude chemical approach, right? But today, the text claims the paradigm is totally different. The military has allegedly transitioned away from those visible chemical drops to an invisible, physics-based approach that relies on weaponized acoustics and thermodynamics. Which brings us to Section 3, the Hurricane Control Patent, US 2003/008526A1. All right, this is where the investigation escalates dramatically. The author shifts from those declassified historical operations to modern documented schematics. I really want you to memorize this number, US 2003/008526A1. The source frames this exact verifiable U.S. patent as the literal blueprint for modern weather warfare. According to the document, this is not a fringe theory. It is a legally filed, quote, hurricane and tornado control device specifically designed to actively manipulate catastrophic weather events. The author basically treats this patent like a high-tech operations manual, and I gotta say, the tactical playbook it outlines is intense. Step 1, specialized aerospace platforms are flown directly into the eye or the periphery of a forming hurricane. Step 2, once they've infiltrated the storm, they deploy these massive downward-facing acoustic generators. And finally, Step 3, by using those generators, they physically alter the barometric pressure to literally steer the storm. The whole thing is framed as an engineered manipulation of nature from the inside out. Let's dig into how that actually works in Section 4, Acoustic Generators and Resonance, the Physics of the Storm. Now, you're probably wondering, how on earth can a sound generator actually move a Category 5 hurricane? Well, the text dives straight into the physics required to make it happen. They call it acoustic geoengineering. Basically, it involves blasting specific high-decibel, low-frequency sound waves directly into the storm system. And crucially, these are megahertz frequencies specifically designed to perfectly match the storm's natural resonant frequency. Think of, an opera singer shattering a wine glass with just their voice.
By achieving that resonance, the author claims the military can completely disrupt thermal convection currents. So they aren't just blowing the storm around, they are physically altering its internal structure to steer it toward a specific target.
This brings us to Section 5, the geopolitical endgame, what the text labels the archonic intent. So, if we understand the how of acoustic geoengineering, we really have to look at what the text claims is the why. Why unleash these horrific disasters in the first place? Well, the source alleges a very dark, highly organized sequence of disaster capitalism. The playbook goes like this. First, wipe out a targeted sovereign community or a coastal city. Next, brutally exploit the resulting chaos and total economic devastation. Third, use that newly created leverage to seize distressed land from traumatized survivors. And finally, implement strict, top-down control systems over the entire area. The argument here is that these aren't natural disasters at all. They're actually stealth weapons for mass land seizure. To anchor this massive theory in reality, the text points to a very specific recent events, the 2023 Lahaina Maui case study. The author presents the absolute tragic destruction of Lahaina as their primary, modern evidence of a targeted geopolitical strike. The really explosive claim here is that the disaster was rapidly exploited by corporate syndicates to acquire highly valuable, newly distressed land from a deeply traumatized local community, right when they were at their most vulnerable. And that leads us to our final section, Section 6, Climate Resilience as Control, the final protocol. This right here is the core tension of the entire document, examining what the source claims is built directly on top of these destroyed communities. We essentially have two entirely competing narratives. The accepted public narrative tells us these are tragic natural disasters driven by an unstable environment, requiring global climate resilience funding to rebuild. But the source aggressively claims the exact opposite. The text argues these are actually engineered strikes designed specifically to impose total population control. They point directly to the push for 15-minute cities, where they allege the surviving population is placed under a strict, hyper-regulated surveillance grid. So based entirely on the fascinating document we've unpacked today, we are left with a massive, genuinely paradigm-shifting question. If the historical military precedent of Operation Popeye is entirely declassified, and the acoustic patents for hurricane control literally exist on paper right now, who really controls the storm? It is a gripping investigative premise that will definitely make you look up at the sky with a whole new perspective. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep asking questions.